If you go to your project Firebase console, you can go to the authentication tab right here to see all the users. We can use some information here in our Cloud Firestore when we are storing their messages. For example, right here, user UID. Okay, so how about we go to Cloud Firestore right now and then initiate our database. So if you visit this page for the first time, there will be a button right here, create database, click, and start in production mode, and next. And then choose your location. You cannot change it later though. Try to choose the one closest to you. So I'm gonna choose Asia East 2, enable. And that is how we can set up our Cloud Firestore for our project. Now back to coding. If you go to package.json down here, you see that we installed 4 Firebase related packages. The first one is React Native Community google-signin. We use this package in login.js to handle the process of signing in, to create a button, and to handle the errors down here in the catch block. In case there is an error, we would know what is wrong and alert the user. Okay. Now back to package.json. We installed React Native Firebase app. This is the core of main Firebase client. If you check out that documentation, you will see that this package Firebase app is the core client and it is required. And if you want to use the authentication, the firestore or Firebase storage, then you need to install additional packages. For example, right here, we installed auth and firestore. We will use this firestore package in the chatbot page so that we can store users' data like messages, ID, and name. Now, let's start by importing firestore from the firestore package. And then down here, if you remember, we passed name and ID props from the login page. If you go to over here, when we use the navigate to the chatbot page, we also pass along the display name and UID, which are taken from Firebase. Okay, we pass them to this page so that we can use it in our chatbot. But I'm going to console.log all the props here to show you that the name and ID do exist in these props. I'm gonna save and I'm gonna open up my debugger. So here I have my debugger running and also the simulator. So I'm gonna sign in. And then I'm going to the chat room. Right here is the props that we printed out. Under the root, you will see that we have the ID and name of the user. So in component did mount, we will check first if there are previous messages in our database. If there are, we are going to download them onto the screen. So to do that, you need to use firestore.collection. We don't have this collection yet. If we don't, Firebase will create this collection for us automatically, and then we're gonna create a document with the ID belonging to this user, okay, so that each document is unique. And then we're gonna create another collection. We're gonna call it messages, and then I want to order the messages by created at and descending. So this is the reasons why I change the date to milliseconds, okay, so that it's easier to sort here. And then I want to limit the messages to just let's say 15. I don't want to pull everything out from the database. And then we're gonna get the data, and then we're gonna get a snapshot, okay. We have to do something with it. So let's declare a new variable called messages, and then we are going to map out all the documents, okay, from here. Remember, we're not getting a single value, we are getting all the documents in this collection, okay. So this is why we want to map out all the documents, and then we're gonna do something with each individual document. In here, I'm going to declare another variable called firebase data, and then put the data belonging to this document in here. Then I'm gonna create another variable called data. Inside, I'm going to pass the doc ID to this, the text doc.text created at new data dot get time, and then everything else, okay, firebase data. If this looks familiar to you, well, because it's the same object that we defined here, okay. We need ID, text, created at, but we still need user. So down here, so we're gonna check if not firebase data dot system. Then we're gonna add this field to this object, okay, data dot user, okay. This gonna add one more field to this object, and I'm gonna pass firebase data dot user, and I'm gonna call name firebase data user dot name, and then I'm going to return this object right here, okay, to messages, okay. Then if the users have if the user has previous messages, like we're gonna check if the messages right here is not empty or length is greater than 0, and then we're gonna set the state name, ID, and all the messages that we took from here. Else, we don't find anything from the database, okay, which means this map function returns nothing. That means the user must be using the chatbot for the first time. So we're gonna this.set state, and then we're gonna set name. You can do like name equals name, but because the key and value are the same, so we can just shorten things up. ID messages. Okay, in this array we're gonna pass in an object of message. Okay, so ID to that would be hello $, and this dot props dot route dot params dot name hello dot Kiro. My name is Mr. Bot. Created at new date dot get time. User is Mr. Bot, and we also send another message with the text like hi. Okay, you don't need to send another message, but I just wanted to create it at new date dot get time, and user is also bot. Okay, now down here, in case of an error, sorry, not here, over here, dot catch, we're gonna function error, and gonna console.log everything out to see what the error is, and save. Okay, so let's review everything again. From the login page, we pass in the name and ID of the Google user, and then we're gonna check our database if there are previous messages belonging to this user, searching the document with this ID. If it doesn't exist, well, the database will create a new collection, new document for us automatically. And right here, okay, if there are previous messages, we're gonna set a state, name, ID, and all the messages taken from the database. But if this is the first time the user is using our chatbot, we're gonna send them these messages. All right, and if there is an error, we're gonna catch it, and then we're gonna examine it. Since we already set up our welcome messages over here or here when there are previous messages, that means we don't need to give it initial values anymore. So the initial value should be like an empty array. Okay, next we're going to store users message to our database, and we will do it here inside the chatbot response function. First, I'm going to remove a message ID from here and here and here, because I don't want to store a message ID to our database in case of an ID conflict in the future. But we still need a message ID for our state though. So to do that, we need to set up our firestore function. So firestore dot collection, go to chatbot history, and document should be ID. We don't have an ID yet in this function, so I'm gonna take it out from params, this dot props dot route dot params, or you can just do this dot state dot id here, because this id will be set over here. Okay, any way that you want. So then dot collection messages, and then we're gonna add an object to the firestore. Okay, an object without an ID, and then we will attach an ID back to the MSG object, because this one, the set state, still need an ID of each message though. So we're gonna do the state dot messages dot length plus 1, exactly like we did before. Okay, we attached an ID to this object and then pass it to this function. Okay, not append. And one more place that we need to do is in onSend. I'm gonna copy this and come down here. I am going to change this one to text, okay, so that we can use this exact same word in here. Okay, so we are calling firestore, go to this collection, this document, this collection, and then we're gonna add the following. So first we're gonna pass in text from here, and then we're gonna add new date dot get time, and then we're gonna identify the user, the sender, which is our user, our Google user. Okay, to name. Okay, they will always get an ID of 1, any user. Okay, and for our chatbot, the ID will be 2. All right, I think this should do it. Now save it and open your simulator if you haven't, and see what happens. Okay, I'm on the login screen. I press go to chat room, but I see nothing. If I open up my debugger, you will see that this is the error. The caller does not have permission to execute the specified operation. This console.log is from here. Okay, this is where we catch it. For some reason, the user doesn't have an authority to get messages or to write to our database. Go to your Firebase console and then go to rules. Right now, read and write are set to false. I'm gonna change this to true and then publish. That's done. Now go back to the login screen and click go to chat room. There, I can type in I want to travel and send. Oh, I know now. So right now, text and name are unknown to this function. So I need to take it out from params. So ID name equals this dot props dot route dot params. Okay, now let's try that again. I want to travel. Send. Nice. Now if you go back and check your database to data, you will see a new message, actually a couple more new messages saved to our database. Pretty cool. Okay, but the rules that we set are not quite secure, so we're gonna make some changes here so that not anyone can write to our database. Okay, I will set this back to false and then type in match slash our directory, which is chatbot slash history slash, and then it takes doc ID slash messages slash, this one will take a message ID ID. Okay, we will allow read and create only if doc ID, which is our user's ID, equals request.auth.uid, and request.auth.uid is not null, which means they have to log in first before being able to read or create a new document. And then I'm gonna press publish. Okay, this is much better. If you go to authentication and check the user UID over here, this is RVU, and then go back to Cloud Firestore. Okay, that matches the UID in authentication. Okay, so go back to the rules that we set. Okay, this is just a normal if else function, so we're gonna check if the user ID matches their own document ID. Okay, nice. Now if you go back, okay, it says right here data is not defined. Oh, okay, it's just a typo. So it's not data, it's date and save. Now, okay, yes, send. Very, 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 very nice. Okay, so in our database, everything is stored. So this is the user's name, the ID, okay, and this is from our chatbot, user ID 2, name Mr. Bot. So when the user comes back to the chat room, all the previous messages will be sorted according to the created date right here, which we stored in milliseconds. Nice. So I'm gonna return to the login page, log out, okay, and then sign in again. Continue. Go to the chat room. Nice. This wraps up our chatbot tutorial. I hope you had fun doing our project, and you can improve our application by adding more screens to it and also redesign the chatbot screen. Thank you for watching and see you next time. Bye bye.